Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something I think we all feel, that sense of being totally overwhelmed by the flood of new information and complicated words coming at us every single day. We're going to build a mental compass to help you find your way through it all. I mean, think about it. We are constantly bombarded with new terms from every direction. You've got science, for instance, throwing out words like quantum entanglement. It sounds super cool, but for most of us, it feels pretty much impossible to grasp, right? And then, on the other hand, you have these really deep, complex philosophical or mystical concepts that pop up, words like emanation. They sound very profound, but you're left wondering, what does that actually mean? And how does it fit into anything I already understand? And it doesn't stop there. Even the world of wellness and productivity has its own jargon. Everyone's talking about getting into a flow state, but often that just feels like another piece of abstract advice in a sea of abstract advice. So if you've ever felt like this, like you're just lost, maybe even drowning in a sea of words, you are definitely not alone. It makes it so hard to figure out what's real or what actually matters. So let's look at a way to navigate these waters. Okay, so this feeling, this sense of being overwhelmed, that's the core problem we're really digging into today. It's the challenge of trying to swim in these incredibly strong currents of global information without getting completely swept away. You see all these terms here, whether they're from hard science, ancient philosophy, or just modern lingo. They can all start to blur together and create a whole lot of confusion. And, sometimes that confusion is accidental, and sometimes it's actually by design. And the real risk here isn't just that you might get a definition wrong. No, it's that when these ambiguous ideas get all mixed up, they can start to mess with our own core beliefs. And that can lead to a very real sense of anxiety, unease, and just persistent doubt. So what do we do about it? How do we find our way through all this fog? Well, let's dive into a really powerful framework that basically acts like a mental compass for your mind. It's called a METAphilosophy policy. Now, don't let that fancy name scare you off. This isn't about rejecting new ideas or building walls around your brain. Not at all. It's about having a consistent, reliable system to check out new concepts and figure out where they actually fit. And that's the crucial part. This whole approach lets you engage with any concept. It doesn't matter how weird or complicated it sounds without losing your own footing. You don't have to feel lost in the process. All right, let's see how this compass actually works in the real world. I promise, this isn't some abstract theory. It's a simple 3-step method you can literally start using today. Okay, here we go. First, you just isolate the term, the word that's tripping you up. Simple. Next, and this is the big one, you uncover the core concept. You look right past the fancy label and ask yourself, what is this really trying to say? And finally, you filter that core idea through your own anchor. You check if it lines up with your foundational beliefs. This process just cuts right through the noise. And here is a perfect example of what happens when we don't do this. You take a basic scientific principle, right? The law of conservation of energy. Solid fact. But then someone makes a huge leap and twists it into a totally different claim. Therefore, God must be a form of energy. Whoa. See that? That's exactly the kind of conceptual mess the compass helps you catch right away. So that third step, the filtering part, that is absolutely the most important piece of this whole framework. And to do it right, you need to have a solid anchor. So what's an anchor? Well, think of it as your personal true north. It's a core, universal truth that you use as your ultimate reference point. It's that fundamental belief or principle you hold that's totally non-negotiable. It's the solid ground you can always come back to, no matter what. And this is why having an anchor is so incredibly powerful. It makes a ridiculously complex world much simpler. You don't have to go out and argue with every single new idea you hear. Why? Because your anchor, your core truth, acts as an automatic filter. And once you have a strong anchor, something fascinating starts to happen. You start to see that many of these supposedly new and confusing ideas, they aren't actually new at all. They're usually just old concepts that have been repackaged with new words. Your anchor helps you recognize those underlying patterns. So we've got the compass, we've got the anchor. What's the real payoff here? Why does this matter so much? Well, the benefits are both intellectual and, just as important, emotional. At the end of the day, this framework gives you a profound sense of clarity and confidence. It seriously reduces that anxiety that comes from all the ambiguity out there. It helps you sift through the noise, pull out the things that are genuinely inspiring, and just toss out the stuff that's misleading, all while you stay firmly grounded in what you believe. So, The most important takeaway is this. You have to be an active navigator of information, not just a passive consumer. And that leaves us with one final, very important thought to consider for yourself. In this massive, confusing, endless world of information, what is your anchor?